You know who takes steps sometimes?
Outstanding.
Oh, that I think was the best segue I've ever done. Much like CM Punk takes steps, another person who takes steps, albeit he had surgery recently, so they're careful steps.
But often in the same self-destructive direction as CM Punk too. So
yeah, kind of. So the rumor is, and there's really no way to completely verify this, but that Vince McMahon is sort of stepping away from WWE creative. And I've been pointing out when we've been doing these shows that I think he has been for a while. I think these have been very Triple H centric shows. I also think a lot of when they did that last round of releases, those, like Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa are still on the show, and Rick Boogs and other sort of Vince McMahon type guys, Elias, are gone as well. So it really feels like it's Triple H's company right now. Now, sort of the reports coming out that's.
Did we ever hear if Ezekiel was released?
Yeah, actually, Elias, like he confirmed that he was Ezekiel, which must have been a huge relief to Kevin Owens.
That explains it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, like, but however, like, so when Vince McMahon, when he arranged the deal with Endeavor for the UFC and WWE merger, it was put into the deal that Vince McMahon basically has control of WWE for life. So technically, like, he could come in and tell Triple H, I'm going to tear up this script. We're going to do what we want. So at some, well, technically, like he could, according to that contract, unless something else has happened that, lets Endeavor know that he's not going to do that.
So there's a few things. One, language like that in a contract, I'm sure, is extremely subject to interpretation. So they may have, worded it in a way that, like, maybe he just thinks he's in charge or something like that. I have two theories about this. One might be a conspiracy theory. The other one I think is probably fairly likely. And that is simply the likely one is you are the CEO of Endeavor. You've just created this new company and you see things going really well in the WWE under this guy, Triple H, who you really like. I think the last thing you want is an old man poking his nose in and upsetting that apple cart. And for the first time ever, they always say the buck stops with Vince. Well, no, there's someone higher than Vince now.
There's there's Ari Emanuel. The buck stops with him.
Exactly. So if you're going to, and they've already kind of said, like, we understand Vince's issues in the past could become problems for us in the future, that kind of thing. So, I mean, they're acknowledging it. And the other thing is that I have a feeling, and this is where the conspiracy kicks in, that, Vince McMahon is a loose cannon. We all know this. He will do what he wants.
Been confirmed. Yes.
So I don't think Endeavor looks at Paul Levesque, the guy they really like and see a future with, and Vince McMahon, the almost 80-year-old crackpot. And they're like, yeah, I think I know which one I want to have lifelong control. So Endeavor's had access to WWE's records, like all of them, for a while now. And my theory is that they have found a few more things that Vince McMahon has done and gotten away with that we knew nothing about. And every time Vince starts to get a little too involved in the creative of the show, they have a meeting and remind him of that. And,
I do think that there's probably something to that, because if you are Endeavor and you're purchasing a company, you are going to do your due diligence and really dive in there. And I think it's hard. Like, obviously, you're going to look at the fact that this is Vince McMahon's creation. There were plenty of wrestling promoters around for a long time, and this is the guy who put them all out of business. but on the other hand, like you're also I'm quite confident Endeavor has uncovered things that the general public has not about Vince McMahon. Like
Yeah.
that, do we really think we know of all of Vince McMahon's misdeeds? No, there's probably a treasure trove of stories that we'll never get to know, but Endeavor knows. So there is, and I believe it was PW Insider or oh god, I don't know. I believe it was PW Insider. It might have been somebody else reported that the like rumor going around backstage is that Triple H has been anointed, if I'm pronouncing that right.
Sir Triple H.
Yes, he's
anointed,
been
not knighted. Never mind. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Uh, but that he is now like that, and what you said is correct. That Endeavor wants him as the guy, and I do think if you're doing a deep dive into this company, it's hard not to notice that Triple H is the guy. Those 6 months where Vince was gone, the company got red hot. Like red hot. Everyone was like, and it was like the entire audience knew, like, like they wanted to check out what Triple H does with the company, and they stayed because Triple H is good at it.
Well, and even people that didn't know, they just knew Vince McMahon was gone.
Yeah.
So they were like, oh, let me see. Even if they don't know that Triple H is the new guy in charge or whatever, people that had lapsed came back because they were like, oh, this could be really different. I want to see that.
Yeah.
Like, that's huge.
But that audience stayed.
Exactly.
Yeah, because it's good. And like we've said before, Vince McMahon and Triple H have a lot of similarities, but the things that make them different are very appealing to wrestling fans. Vince McMahon, and you can't argue this, he is sort of the best promoter in history in terms of creating stars, creating larger than life stars. And he, from Hulk Hogan to John Cena to The Rock or whatever, like he's put the machine behind stars. Triple H knows to do that. He knows what butters the bread of the industry or whatever, but he's also a diehard wrestling fan.
Yeah.
And Vince McMahon always wants to separate WWE from wrestling, but Triple H does not want to do that. And it just comes out in little things here and there that is going to appeal to the wrestling fans while not taking away from the larger than life star creation machine that WWE is. It's just little things here and there, let's call it wrestling, for instance.
Let's use terms like belts and championships and titles,
or acknowledging other companies. It doesn't hurt to say that
acknowledging other companies we own.
Yeah. It doesn't hurt to say, hey, Bronson Reed, before he came to WWE, was in Japan and he beat Kazuchika Okada, and like that makes him sound cool.
But this always goes to something that I've mentioned a million times over the years, and that is that WWE forgets that wrestling is supposed to be a sport, right?
Yeah.
It's supposed to be treated like a sport, and AEW does a little better job at treating it like a sport, like a sporting event. But they always used to ride Tony Schiavone for being like, this is the greatest day in the history of our sport. And it's like, we all get it. But at the same time, it's best when it is uber seriously treated like a sport, and climbing that mountain, winning a championship, all that stuff. And WWE loses a little bit of excitement every time they make it clear that they're much more about storytelling and entertainment than actually wrestling. Yeah. And I think Triple H is smart enough to know that you can still have that, but make it feel real enough with the wrestling that both sides are satisfied.
Yeah, the drama has to take place within the context of a sport, right? Yeah. And that doesn't mean you still can't have, so and so's manager left him for another, because that it still takes place within the context of the sport. And Vince would seem to lose sight of that more than other wrestling promoters have.
He looked at it more like a TV show.
Yeah.
And a Triple H sees it as a wrestling TV show. And that's a big difference.
I would actually say, based on how he booked NXT, that Triple H is more sports centric than Tony Khan is sports centric.
Yeah.
definitely in terms of the matchmaking. Like Triple H is much more like if somebody's getting a title shot, there's a reason they're getting a title shot. Like you've had
Yeah.
them win a bunch of times leading up to it. Whereas in AEW, I mean, the running joke is that AR Fox has challenged for a championship 9 times, but he doesn't have like a singles victory like ever, you know? And it's that kind of thing that like, again, I really enjoy AEW. I can totally look past this, but it does frustrate me when you can't follow why somebody's getting a title shot based on their track record. Then it's like, well, when that happens, then all of these other matches, well, they don't even matter because you just get a title shot for just getting a title shot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes it seem a lot less like they're just pulling names out of a hat.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and there's genuine storylines and reasons for it. That's why I always kind of used to like how you could see a progression in WWE stars where like, you know, they would come out for, and maybe they were part of a tag team and then the tag team split up and then they had a US championship run that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Then they became the Intercontinental Championship and then they could rise up into the elite if they were, you know, and fight for world championships and stuff. And there was always kind of a progression that way, you know, like just about every world champion, you know, unless there was kind of like weird situations or they were brought in as like a part-timer, kind of went that flow and built themselves up the card, right? Winning more and more prestigious championships. And when you, like you say, you just kind of like give title shots to people, it
Yeah.
completely takes away the growth that the character is experiencing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it also devalues your other titles because it's like, why am I busting my ass for the international title when clearly you can just stumble into world title shots?
Yeah, exactly. It lessens the importance of the titles. And Triple H definitely seems like he's come out of the gates wanting to make the title seem very, very important. You know, that's well, definitely right now in WWE. I don't know how much of this is Triple H or just like I would imagine there's a bigger strategy here that goes beyond just the wrestling show, but they've had these monumental title reigns. Right? Like Roman Reigns has been champion for like 1,000 days. Gunther's the longest reigning champion of all time. They made a big deal out of Bianca Belair having the longest reign with the SmackDown women. So they're all into these records right now. And I wonder if that's the idea of like how to build up Roman Reigns as like this greatest of an era, a star, right? And just so that strikes me as something that might be a Nick Khan thing.